I'm Michael Miklaucic. I retired from the federal government in September, and I'm currently a lecturer at the University of Chicago, the Oswaldo Aranha Professor of Security Studies at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, a senior advisor to the Irregular Warfare Center, and a consultant to the École de Guerre in France.
Well, in your lecture, you talked about the evolving nature of transnational crime. I'm wondering how globalization has accelerated the rise of criminal networks, and what are some of the most significant trends shaping that expansion?
The most dramatic changes over the last 20 years are the advances in information, communication, and transportation technology, which have made the world basically a very compressed network. And the very same technologies that enable the growth of legitimate trade and commerce also enable illicit commerce and trade. So what's happening is that what used to be geographically segmented markets have become one large global market. And trading is done electronically via the many kinds of internet transactions, and with global logistics and global transportation technology, vast quantities of commodities can be moved all over the world very rapidly, very quickly, and very clandestinely. That has been a big change.
Super interesting. I mean, even not just legitimate goods, but illegitimate goods.
Absolutely illegitimate goods. That's the real change in the illicit market.
Kind of going off this, what you were talking about this morning about the Rolexes and these luxury goods that are
Counterfeited.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Why should the average citizen care about transnational organized crime?
About transnational organized crime in particular, or about counterfeit specifically?
I guess either, but I know that having worked with Homeland Security previously, these are the kinds of things that fund terrorist activity. So,
well, let's start with counterfeit. I mean, when you buy a counterfeit good, you're subsidizing crime, theft, taking away somebody else's intellectual property, and basically underwriting this, what I described as, and what I often describe as, a parasitic underworld ecosystem that erodes the scaffolding of the rule of law that upholds legitimate business, normal transactions. Going beyond counterfeiting and that particular international crime, you should be worried because the legitimacy of the state is put in question when the state can't control that kind of crime, that kind of illicit activity. When you see growing violence, people lose faith in the state as in its ability to protect them. In a Weberian sense, the state being having the monopoly of the legitimate use of force, you lose faith in the state and its institutions. Countries crumble. Many countries in the world right now, people have no faith whatsoever in the state. So should we be concerned about transnational organized crime? Yes, because it erodes the legitimacy of the state.
Okay, so many experts, including yourself, talk about transnational criminal organizations and their ability to move quickly and efficiently, and much more so than government organizations. How can government and international organizations adapt to counter these rapidly evolving threats?
Well, it's hard. Government is inherently slow. Bureaucracies are slow, but they have the advantage of being able to execute long-term enduring programs such as public education, making people aware of the dangers of illicit markets and complicity in illicit trade. They can legislate, create a legal framework for prosecuting crimes that is adaptive and that can create a deterrent effect on criminals. Using the legitimate monopoly of force. So those are some of the ways. Intelligence sharing, cooperation with other governments across borders, that is very important. These organizations that we're talking about, transnational organized criminal organizations, love borders because they're not restricted by them, but they know that we are, that the state is. The state must learn to share intelligence and to cooperate across borders in order to effectively neutralize these organizations. If not, it just opens up these porous areas, apertures that illicit organizations just move into. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and this goes back to your first question about what is new, and this is a trend that I think is very disconcerting and something that we should be concerned about, and that is the growing use of cryptocurrencies, encrypted communications media, and shell companies that are able, the three of them together are able to shield the perpetrators of these crimes and their earnings from legitimate scrutiny. They're able to hide their earnings, launder money, and without any kind of accountability or transparency. And that's something, it's growing, the encrypted communications media and the cryptocurrency are something that we have to be I understand the need for and the desire for privacy, but there has to be a balance between individual privacy and the public good. And to that extent, we need to be very careful about the way that people use encrypted media and cryptocurrencies.
Would you add the dark web into that kind of category?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The magnitude of transactions going on in the dark web, again, we can't even begin to guess what it is with any accuracy. And these are spaces, domains that are inhabited by criminals, and they operate freely there.
In my previous role, we had there's storefronts, right? Like where you can order anything and anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's really awful. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate that follow-up. From your perspective, how does the Marshall Center contribute to shaping policies, training security professionals, or even facilitating collaboration among partner nations to try to tackle this growing threat?
The Marshall Center and its sister organizations have a unique role in bringing people from different national settings, often different legal cultures, together to share insights, tactics, techniques, procedures, laws that they find either effective or ineffective, so that they can learn from each other and benefit from a vastly larger and diverse set of experiences. I've been a visiting professor at the Marshall Center for years, and I have met hundreds, literally hundreds of law enforcement and security professionals from all over the world that have been able to work together, to make friends, make acquaintances, and to build the network that Professor Aquila at the Naval Postgraduate School taught us, the network that's required to defeat a network. He wrote that it takes a network to defeat a network. So every time a group of professionals, national security professionals, law enforcement professionals from around the world can convene here at the Marshall Center, they are building their network in order to defeat the network, the adversary network that they're confronted with on a daily basis in their day jobs.
It's that information sharing capacity that you were talking about, right? That
absolutely
ability to be able to share intelligence across
borders, sharing intelligence in creating the counter network.
In what ways can the Marshall Center support countries in strengthening their resilience?
I think the Marshall Center has a unique capacity to convene. But it also has this network, this global network of alumni. I don't know the numbers. I had imagined it's in the 10,000s of alumni of the Marshall Center that it can call upon, that it can network with, support, provide information to, even long after they've left the Marshall Center. Some of those will elevate to major senior national security roles. And they will always remember their experience at the Marshall Center. And the Marshall Center should continue to be in touch with them as they should be in touch with the Marshall Center in order to reinforce that network, in order to get more people coming into this network, joining this network. And that in itself is a support. Additionally, the Marshall Center has, in the past, I believe, had alumni events in country.
Yes.
I know that to be a fact. I have participated in one or two, and it provides an opportunity for professionals within a country to convene again and to remind themselves to renew those connections, and again to share the insights that they have, the observations that they've made that are necessary to counter transnational organized criminal groups.
Given your line of work and your proximity to the issue, have you heard of any success stories of security professionals that have trained at the Marshall Center implementing countermeasures or successful policies in their home country?
I remember one very clearly. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember an alumnus who told me that after meeting, this was from an Eastern European country, after attending the Countering Transnational Organized Crime course and meeting counterparts from the region, Eastern Europe, he was able to contact one of his counterparts in a neighboring country in order to set up a sting operation that eventually led to the takedown and the arrest of a number of drug traffickers operating between those two countries. I won't name names, I won't give the countries, but it was, in my view, a stunning proof of concept that these kinds of networking opportunities do have real-world outcomes.
Looking ahead then, do you see any emerging threats or trends in transnational organized crime that policymakers or security professionals should be paying closer attention to?
I'll reiterate my concerns about encrypted means of communication and cryptocurrencies. But I think that the real problem here is that the way that we address this challenge is very much on attacking the supply side of the equation. Transnational organized crime groups trade on the demand for illicit goods and services, whether it's drugs, human trafficking, illegal timber, whatever it is. They trade on the demand. As long as we don't address the demand side, they will continue to find ways to supply that demand. So we may catch some criminals, others will emerge to fill that gap, to fill that niche in the market. When we have learned how to address the demand side, that will cause the marketplace to evaporate, the illicit marketplace to evaporate, and to transition into legal markets. But until we do that, we're never going to solve these problems. And to that point, I think the idea of solving these problems, to defeating transnational organized crime, and I don't like that I'm always cast as a pessimist, but transnational organized crime in general, have been with us since time immemorial. It's regrettably a part of human nature. Those people who need quick wins, easy wins, constant feedback, they have to choose a different profession, because this profession is permanent. We will always be fighting some form of crime, some form of transnational organized crime. And the best that we can do is manage it down to the least harmful methods, the least harmful the least harmful markets. As I suggested earlier during my lecture, if we can get transnational criminals to focus on non-lethal crimes, that's a win for us. So that is what I would advise anyone going into this business, to not expect easy wins or quick wins, to recognize that it's a permanent problem, and that the best we can do is manage it rather than trying to solve it.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you, that we didn't cover, that you would like to share or add?
Let me just add that, in my view, the problem of transnational organized crime is what has been described as a wicked problem. It is a highly complex ecosystem that's constantly evolving, that has many, if not all, of the attributes of the wicked problem. There's no single definition of the problem. Everybody that approaches it differently, defines it differently. Every time you try to have an impact on it, it changes, it evolves, it morphs into a new form. The problem solver has no right to be wrong in trying to solve it, because when you try to solve it in the wrong way, that can do irreparable harm as well. So I think that you have to approach it like one approaches any wicked problem, with the idea of managing it rather than solving it, with the idea that it changes over time, it evolves over time, and that you have to adapt with it, and that it can't be addressed like a mechanical problem. It has to be addressed as an ecosystem, permanently adapting, permanently evolving ecosystem. If you look at it that way, I think that your approach, your strategic approach to it, is likely to be more successful.